With A Day to Remember reportedly working on a new album to be released in 2025, I think it's important for us to fans to come to terms with the fact that we're probably never going to see the old A Day to Remember ever again. And that's okay, because bands should progress as their careers go on. We don't want to constantly hear the same exact album and the same exact breakdowns from our favorite bands. But I personally think A Day to Remember has departed a little too far from the band that we all fell in love with. These are just my own personal opinions, but I'm going to talk about what I think led to the current iteration of A Day to Remember, what I like about what they've done over the past couple years, and what I'd like to see from them in the future, especially if they do come out with a new album in 2025. What's up, guys? I'm Matt from A Change of Scene. I appreciate you guys being here. Do me a favor and subscribe below to see more content like this. I originally found A Day to Remember back in like 2007, scrolling mp3.com or something like that. I came across the album For Those Who Have Heart, and I thought the album cover looked sick and the name of the band was cool, and I figured I'd give it a try. Within the first listen, I absolutely loved them. Like a lot of A Day to Remember fans, I thought it mixed the perfect balance of what Finn McKenty likes to call pop punk with breakdowns. The vocals were great, like the cleans, but also the screaming or the gutturals from Jeremy. It was just a perfect blend of these great riffs and songwriting and emotion and power. It's perfect. They were signed to Victory Records at the time, and that album would start their ascension in the scene. A lot of people like me went back and listened to And Their Name Was Treason, and I also love that album, even though it doesn't have as high of a production value. Some of those tracks on there are really great. Homesick came out at the beginning of 2009 and absolutely crushed the charts. It was by far the biggest album in the scene at the time. Everybody was talking about this album. The tracks Downfall of Us All, I'm Made of Wax Larry, and If It Means a Lot to You are still like scene classic songs. Homesick skyrocketed A Day to Remember professionally. After this album, they weren't even in the same universe as most of the other bands that they were around. And I think like a lot of other A Day to Remember fans, it really cemented for me at the time, like, this is my favorite band. It doesn't get any better than this. I know it was very early in A Day to Remember's career, but one of the things that kind of just rubbed me the wrong way was when Tom Denny left the band. Tom did guitar work. He also worked as a producer in some capacity and songwriting. And he went on to go still do a lot of those things, but I really do think he added a lot of great elements to A Day to Remember in those early years. Now, I am a huge Kevin Scaff fan. I was even listening to him back when Four Letter Lie was still around. He's an amazing guitar player, an amazing songwriter, and backup vocals. He's a great addition to the band. If you're gonna replace Tom Denny, Kevin Scaff was like the perfect selection. So it's no shame to Kevin. I just fell in love with the band when Tom was still there. Now, the next few years were very successful for A Day to Remember as far as future album releases and tours. It sucks that they were tied up in a lawsuit against Victory Records for that time, though. They would release What Separates Me From You and go on to win that court case against Victory. They met their album contractual commitments, and now they could finally start working on their own project. They would release Common Courtesy in October of 2013. I also absolutely loved the social media marketing behind this album release for A Day to Remember. I remember it being one of those like YouTube series that I had to like go and check every week to get an update on that. They were doing like skits with the band and all sorts of fun stuff and like building up this release, and it felt really good for the band to do their own thing at the time too. I remember being really happy for them. And if you remember that time around 2012 to 2014, they probably were still like one of the biggest bands in the scene. The only people that were even in the same stratosphere as A Day to Remember might be like Bring Me the Horizon. Maybe like Motionless in White was coming up at the time and The Devil Wears Prada. But to my memory, A Day to Remember like was that band. And like I said, they were my favorite band and a lot of other people's favorite band at that time. They could do no wrong. So Common Courtesy came out and was another fantastic release from the band. At this point, A Day to Remember is riding high, and I don't think anything can stop them. They started working on Bad Vibrations around 2015. With the release of Bad Vibrations, that's the only time that my fandom kind of started to like develop cracks. Whereas every album up until this point, I was 100% bought in, loved every song. Commercially, I think Bad Vibrations did really well, but to me, it didn't quite have the punch that the previous releases had. That's just my own personal opinion about how I felt when it was released. There are songs on there like Paranoia and Justified that are still bangers to me, but to me personally, it just wasn't the same. But it was critically acclaimed and a lot of people loved Bad Vibrations. From 2018 up until their next release as You're Welcome, we didn't really hear a lot from A Day to Remember. We got some singles here and there, but it was mostly bad stuff. I think at the time there were a lot of allegations floating around about bassist Joshua Woodard. And we got some pretty good singles like Resentment, Mind Reader, and then Rescue Me with Marshmello. But when You're Welcome came out during the pandemic in 2021, it did not impress fans at all. I remember listening to it on the very first playthrough. I mean, we're in quarantine. What else are we supposed to do? And I just could not get into it. Like I said, the singles were pretty decent overall, but something about the sound was just off, or the way the track listing was, like I just could not get into the album. I later found out that Jeremy McKinnon had went out to Los Angeles and was like writing songs with, you know, pop producers and things like that. I don't know 100% like what that writing process was like, but I personally could not get into it. And to me, it didn't sound like what I fell in love with A Day to Remember with, and maybe what I thought their direction should have been at that time. I know I'm not alone in that. You're Welcome is regarded as like one of the least favorite albums by their fans. To this day, I do love tracks like High Diving. I think that's a great one. But the cringy ones like Viva La Mexico, maybe if I was still like 22, like I could see myself getting into that song when we used to go on spring break. But for a group of 30-year-old guys in a hardcore pop punk band, I was not vibing with that at the time. And we were still in the middle of a quarantine, so, you know. Plus, like right after that album came out, all of the stuff about Joshua Woodard like really surfaced. In October of that year, he had to leave the band due to allegations of previous sexual misconduct. And it also came out that apparently he had been in a car accident and killed somebody. So he's out. I don't even know that they've signed a bassist since then. I remember seeing the music video for Miracle and there was only 4 people in the band. Miracle dropped in 2022. And I remember hearing that and seeing that video and be like, yes, A Day to Remember is back. Thank you. I really thought it was going to be the beginning of like them returning a little bit more to their roots. It was heavy, it was catchy. But then in 2024, Feedback came out. Now this is almost 2 years in between releases. July of 22 and May of 24. Well, I know they were touring, but like, what were they doing for 2 years if it's not releasing new music? 2 singles in 3 years? You know, I don't know what to think about that. I know that they have been touring a lot, but we definitely want a new album from A Day to Remember. And I believe that's what they're working on now. Feedback felt like a little bit of a slap in the face to fans who were criticizing them about You're Welcome. Throughout the song, you know, Jeremy's saying things like, if I wanted your feedback, I would let you know, or if I wanted to hear your opinion, we would ask for it. That's what the lyrics sounded like and felt like to me. And on top of that, like, it just sounded like a generic, like, pop punky metalcore song. There wasn't really anything special to it. Once again, that's just my opinion, but I know that I'm not alone in feeling that. So what exactly is going on with A Day to Remember? Is it the songwriting? Is it who they're collaborating with? Is it just, you know, us as fans are not vibing with the direction that the band wants to go in? Think about the bands that came up around the same time as A Day to Remember and like, you know, were close to the popularity and where they're at now. Bands like Asking Alexandria, Of Mice and Men. A lot of fans out there don't really vibe with the new rock concept that some of these bands are going for. A little more like mainstream rock sound. I'm not saying that's 100% what A Day to Remember's goal is, but if you listen to Feedback, tell me that it's kind of not in that same vein. On the other hand, you have bands like I mentioned before, like Bring Me the Horizon, who are just still doing it at a really high level. And Bring Me the Horizon can pull it off working with pop artists. So the songwriting, the production, and maybe the direction that the band wants to go in. I think another factor is maybe being a little passive aggressive towards the fan base. You know, the same fan base that skyrocketed you through that stratosphere, and just kind of being like, yeah, I don't want to hear what you guys have to say, even though we've all kind of been here since day one, you know? And then the shakeups and the turmoil within the band, that can't be good for cohesion. Maybe Joshua had a bigger impact on the songwriting or production than, you know, we know about. Releases like Miracle do give me hope for A Day to Remember because I know that that songwriting ability is still there. I know they can deliver on a sound that, you know, us fans can agree is what we kind of want to hear from them. But I'm extremely curious to see in which direction they choose to go with this new album. Will it be more of a return to their roots? Will it be a new iteration of that? Or do you think A Day to Remember is going to like really lean into the rock radio side of things? I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are and what your experiences of your fandom with A Day to Remember has been like over the years. Let me know what you think the band is up to and what you hope to see from them. I really appreciate you guys subscribing, especially if you like content like this. I'm also curious to see what bands you'd like to see me talk about in the future. Who else can we motivate to make some good music again? I'll see you next time.